Now, one of the more pernicious theories out there is that Jeffrey Epstein's sex abuse of 14-year-olds isn't as bad as if he went after 5-year-olds. Disgusting theory. Now, if Epstein's lawyer or Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer said something like that, that would just be par for the course, but I don't understand why anyone else would say that. Now, Nazi apologist Nick Fuentes is a proponent of that theory, for example. Now, he's out there saying that Epstein shouldn't even be regarded as a pedophile, and that the real story of Epstein is his alleged role as an agent for Israel who tried to entrap powerful men into raping underage girls to use as blackmail. So, Nick Fuentes misses the mark on every front. He turns the tragedy of Epstein's decades-long sex abuse of underage girls and large-scale destruction of their lives into an anti-Zionist conspiracy theory. Extremely malicious. Now, the Epstein Files contain landmines. Now, we read through the documents and they reveal callous disregard for humanity by a billionaire, Epstein, and his heiress girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, they didn't just treat the underage girls like peasants, they treated them like animals. Now, I don't know how else to phrase it, although people go to jail for treating animals the way that they treated these young girls. Now, there's one set of documents in the style of a diary from a victim who was 16 when the abuse started. Now, she was forced to have Jeffrey Epstein's baby. The first baby was a girl who was taken from her 15 minutes after the birth by Ghislaine Maxwell. Then it seems the baby stopped whimpering. So the baby girl could have died or maybe was killed or removed from earshot. But that incident, for example, still needs to be resolved if it hasn't been already. Now, in my view, Ghislaine Maxwell should give testimony under oath about that incident. She should testify as to what happened to that baby girl who was a child of Epstein and the unidentified teenager. Now, I don't know if that's the young victim there. Her face is redacted, but she's either very petite or she's straight up just a child. Now, according to the diary entries, the teenager said she felt like a quote-unquote human incubator and wanted to go back to the person she was before. She wrote, "There is no respect for me as a human. I am nothing but your property and incubator." And in her diaries, she has a magazine clipping about slavery in the 21st century. She wrote, "Help me, please can't anyone find me?" "Farewell to a princess and an angel," she writes. Now, that's the baby girl that was taken from her right after birth. Also, a magazine clipping that says, "Inhuman Prophet." So, in my view, this young girl recognized that Epstein's profit-making ability, his extreme wealth, is what enabled him to enslave her. Now, she was trafficked to powerful men, and she was forced to have babies. Now, from her diary, it seems she had at least 2 babies. Now, it's been reported that Epstein told an unnamed female scientist that he wanted to improve humanity by impregnating as many as 20 women at a time at his ranch in New Mexico. Another scientist named Jaron Lanier said he met the woman scientist at a dinner party at Epstein's townhouse in New York, and she told him what she knew about Epstein's plans. Now, that seems to track with what happened to the impregnated teen who wrote in her diary. "And go to New Mexico? What the hell? This makes no sense. What about school?" I mean, that's gut-wrenching. She was talking about New Mexico, where the ranch is located. Then she wrote about Ghislaine Maxwell's jealousy over the pregnancy. She wrote, "He is now controlling everything when it used to be Ghislaine, who some days acts like she hates me." Then the underage girl wrote, "I don't understand why she is treating me some days like I'm the enemy, but then we lay in bed together and she is how she used to be, warm." So that's consistent with what victims have reported about Maxwell. She sexually abused the girls as well. Now, there's a Jane Doe who said Ghislaine Maxwell raped her about 20 to 30 times, and under the guise of helping her modeling career, because Maxwell said that that's what would be expected of her as a model. Now, that Jane Doe was 14 when the abuse began. At age 16, she became pregnant and was forced to have an abortion. Then Maxwell and Epstein became fearful she would report them to the police and gang raped her along with some other people. A driver who had a gun dumped her off naked at her grandparents' house and told her she wouldn't come back alive the next time. Now, that was done to keep her silent, and it worked for many years. The victim says she quit school, went underground, and didn't live life for the most part. She was so afraid they would come back and kill her. Now back to the diary. The underage impregnated girl said about Epstein and Maxwell, "He makes her feel my tummy, and it's so sad and confusing. Superior gene pool? Why me? It makes no sense. Why my hair color and eye color? That feels very Nazi-like, but in thinking about these stupid, insane theories he has, I guess in his mind it makes sense." So the girl clearly understood she was being used as a slave. She wrote about the baby-making scheme. After so many bonding moments with Jeffrey, Ghislaine, their baby inside me with me in the middle, she wouldn't even look at me. Now there she's talking about Ghislaine Maxwell's jealousy again. Another snippet about the pregnancy scheme. A couple of months and 2 pink lines with a hold on being with others until after it was positive. So that's Epstein's scheme of improving humanity with his own sperm, which the scientists had heard about at the dinner party at his townhouse. Now, did the pregnancy or the births make this girl special? No, because the girl was trafficked to other men. She wrote, "Jean-Luc Brunel is a disgusting pig with bad breath. 6 weeks wasn't even given before being sent back. Punishment for trying to run. Why can no one help me? Is this my destiny?" Now, was it her destiny to be a slave, in other words? At that point, she thought it would never end. She wrote, "This is not surprising, but there is no such thing as a child prostitute. They are children and cannot consent. They are missing the biggest in my own backyard, and so many more, like Mar-a-Lago and where I see Mr. Joe and Mrs. Ann." So I don't know about that last part, Mr. Joe and Mrs. Ann, but in reference to Mar-a-Lago, now this girl's diary suggests Epstein and Maxwell did use Mar-a-Lago for their criminal activity, unbeknownst to President Trump, who's been thoroughly investigated and cleared on this matter. Now, he said he banned Ghislaine Maxwell from Mar-a-Lago because she was stealing his employees. Now, Virginia Giuffre was one of those employees. She became Epstein's most vocal accuser. She had worked in the locker room at Mar-a-Lago as a teenager. Now, that's where she met Ghislaine Maxwell and was lured into the underage sex trafficking ring. Now, Giuffre said consistently that Donald Trump wasn't involved in the sex abuse and that she didn't think he even knew about it. Giuffre ended her own life last year. Now, there's further proof of an Epstein child because elsewhere in the Epstein Files, Fergie, the former Duchess of York, congratulated Epstein on the birth of a baby boy. Now, Fergie was married to the former Prince Andrew, who was probably the most well-known client of Epstein's sex trafficking ring. There he is with Virginia Giuffre. Now, he was stripped of his royal title last year. And here's a photo that hadn't been released until recently, but apparently he's been reported to the police in the UK because of that photo. Now, Fergie in the Epstein Files congratulates Epstein on the birth of a baby boy. Now, some folks have been speculating online that the child could have been sold or trafficked and become a slave himself. Now, here is Epstein post-mortem. Now, they tried to administer CPR and other life-saving measures, but he was already dead when he was found in the jail cell. Now, here's a close-up of his face, bloated. Epstein signed his last will and testament just 2 days before his death, which is further evidence he planned to kill himself. And he made no provision for children in the last will and testaments. Now, Epstein left the bulk of his estate, including the island where he abused hundreds of underage girls, the New York townhouse, and the New Mexico ranch, to one of his girlfriends, Karina Shuliak. Now, she's a woman from Belarus who arrived in the U.S. at the age of 20. The same year, Epstein was released from prison on the soliciting prostitution charge. Now, he only served 13 months for that reduced charge, which was another source of outrage. Now, it's always going to be a source of speculation, not just about Karina Shuliak, but about anyone in Epstein's inner circle, that they might have looked the other way, even if they didn't actively help Epstein commit crimes. Now, Karina Shuliak didn't take possession of any asset from her relationship with Epstein, apparently. Like Ghislaine Maxwell, who inherited nothing from her wealthy father's estate because his financial empire had collapsed by the time of his death. Karina Shuliak similarly received nothing from Epstein's estate, according to reports, because the estate was placed in a trust to compensate victims and to pay taxes. So, crime doesn't pay. Now, we all knew that. Still, the question remains, why were his accomplices so evil? Now, the Jane Doe who was abused from age 14 and then gang raped said that Ghislaine Maxwell was just as evil as Epstein and that he never could have procured so many victims without her participation. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.